Although Henrietta Lacks never traveled farther from Baltimore to her home in Virginia, her cells traveled through the earth and far above it. Many of you may not know who Henrietta Lacks is, but she has contributed to your existence far more than you ever know. Henrietta Lacks lived a very short life, but her cells are what made her famous. HeLa cells are everywhere today, and they have contributed to the medical field very generously. I first heard about Henrietta Lacks in my biomedical class when we watched a movie over it and learned a little bit more about her. This is the story of Henrietta's life and how she became the mother of modern medicine. Henrietta Lacks was born August 1st in 1920 in Virginia. Her mother died while giving birth to her, I think she had 2 kids after Henrietta, and her dad didn't want her, which left Henrietta with her grandfather, and then her grandfather also was raising another grandchild named Day. Growing up, she was a very poor tobacco farmer. In 1941, Henrietta married her cousin Day, and they moved shortly after that. According to Britannica.com, before her 5th pregnancy, Henrietta got a knot inside her and worrisome bleeding and evidence of a lump on her cervix several months after giving birth finally sent her to the doctor. This is when she went to Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore, where she was diagnosed with cervical cancer. George Gay, at the time that she was at the hospital, took a sample of the tumor while she was there. She went through radiation, however, Henrietta Lacks died in 1951. Although Henrietta died, the cells that were taken from her are still alive today. When Gay took Henrietta's cells, he was trying to find a cell that doesn't die, because when you take a cell out of the human body, usually it dies within a very short period of time. But Henrietta's cells were different in the face that they do not die when they're outside of the body. They grow unusually fast because they are cancerous cells, and they are immortal, meaning that they will divide again and again. This allowed scientists to spend less time trying to keep the cells alive and more time to focus on performing their actual experiment. They became the most used cell in the human biology. According to the article, Henrietta Lacks cells made these breakthroughs possible on Oprah.com. John Salk developed the first polio vaccine. It had to be tested on HeLa cells, and the HeLa cells stayed alive, so he was able to test it. And then HeLa cells were mistakenly mixed with a liquid that caused the chromosomes to unclump, and this allowed scientists to see like the different chromosomes and like genes that were wrong with them. HeLa cells were also sent into space to test the zero gravity's impact of human cells. Another thing that they also contributed was to help map out the human genome. And then today they're still being used. In 2014, they implanted synthetic nanomotors into HeLa cells, and the technology might allow doctors to destroy cancer cells from the inside one day. Although HeLa cells were widely used, and we can see that they are still being used today, these cells have also brought a lot of controversy. The way that HeLa cells were obtained were the major reason that they were unethical. So when Gay took her cells, he did not ask her for permission or anything. And so in an article that I found from the Smithsonian, it says, "What is very true about science is that there are human beings behind it, and sometimes even with the best of intentions, things go wrong." So Henrietta's cells were taken without her consent. Nobody ever told the family, and the family didn't find out until 20 years later. Her cells were being used around the world, yet she didn't know, and neither did her family. Medical professions, they looked down on the family because they were a poor African-American family. And Henrietta's story also guided laws to be set in place so that we didn't have this issue again, and so you would have to consent to things before you did. So now you know a little bit about Henrietta and her immortal life as a HeLa cell. You can also see this case was unethical, and it caused concern for future patients. Even if you're not interested in the medical field, I hope you now know that the mother of modern medicine has a big impact on you and others. Henrietta was a poor woman who had a short life due to cancer, but she didn't die that day. Her HeLa cells are used all around the world, and they have helped out in so many things and have done great things. As I come to a close, let me leave you with a quote from a New York Times article by Adele Hassan saying, "Clover, Virginia, and Baltimore are separated by 250 miles. The distance that mankind and science traveled because lax made that short journey is immeasurable. No dead woman has done more for humanity."